The harder you chase happiness, the faster it slips through your fingers. It sounds cruel, doesn't it? As if life were playing a cosmic joke, dangling joy just close enough for us to see, but always pulling it away when we reach for it. From childhood, we're taught that happiness is a prize to be earned. Work harder, plan better, be smarter, and eventually, you'll hold it in your hands. But nature tells a very different story. One that's far older and far wiser than our human ambitions. Imagine standing by a quiet river at dawn. The water moves without hurry, yet it never stops. It bends around stones, glides over pebbles, and flows toward the sea without once checking a map. It doesn't demand that the sea come to it. It trusts the path that is already there. Or picture autumn leaves falling in a slow, swirling dance. They don't cling to the branch out of fear that their journey will end. They let go, not knowing where the wind will take them. Happiness is a little like those leaves, like that river. It arrives when the conditions are right, not when you force it, but when you create the space for it to land. The paradox is simple but uncomfortable. The more you let go, the more comes to you. And the more you grasp, the more it escapes. We live in a culture addicted to gripping, to setting goals, tracking progress, and treating life like a project plan with milestones and deadlines. We don't just want happiness, we want guarantees. We want it delivered on schedule, with tracking updates along the way. But joy doesn't work that way. It's not a package you can order. It's closer to a shy animal. The more you chase it, the further it runs. So here's the question that turns everything upside down. What if happiness isn't something you achieve, but something you allow? What if the very act of chasing is the thing keeping it away? Alan Watts once said that trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. The same is true of happiness. The more you try to pin it down, the more it wriggles free. Maybe the real art is to stop the chase, to loosen your grip, and to trust that life, like that river, knows where it's going, even when you don't. A few years ago, a small-town farmer hired a young man to help him on his land. The job sounded simple enough. Spend the day sorting freshly dug potatoes into 3 piles, large, medium, and small. No heavy lifting, no dangerous machinery, just a quiet day under the shade of the barn roof. By noon, the young man looked more exhausted than if he'd been hauling sacks all morning. His brow was furrowed, his shirt damp with sweat, and he moved slower and slower. Finally, just before sunset, he walked over to the farmer, handed back his gloves, and said, "I quit." The farmer was stunned. "You've only been sorting potatoes," he said. The young man sighed. "It's not the work, it's the decisions. Every potato, I have to decide. Is it big, medium, or small? It never ends. It's too much thinking." We laugh at that story. A grown man undone by potatoes. But the truth is, most of us live like that every single day. We sort and resort every moment of our lives. Is this job making me happy? Is this the right relationship? Should I be doing more? Am I behind? We think that the more choices we control, the closer we'll get to happiness. Instead, we find ourselves mentally exhausted, unable to enjoy the life right in front of us. Happiness doesn't hide from us because it's cruel. It hides because we keep crowding it out with our constant sorting. Every decision feels urgent. Every moment has to be maximized. We treat life like a bucket of potatoes that must be perfectly organized before we can rest. And by the time we finish, we're too tired to enjoy the meal. Here's the irony. The farmer wasn't going to do anything with those piles that night. The work didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to get done. In the same way, most of the things we stress about don't actually determine our happiness. But our mind tells us otherwise. It whispers that the stakes are high, that we must control everything to feel safe. And yet, if we stepped back, if we stopped obsessing over each potato, we might find something surprising. The day feels lighter, the air smells sweeter, and happiness slips quietly back into the room without us chasing it. That story about sorting potatoes might seem small, even silly, but it's a perfect mirror for how we handle life. We think exhaustion comes from doing too much, but more often it comes from trying to control too much. Every decision, every plan, every possible outcome, we try to hold it all in our hands at once. And just like that young man in the barn, we end the day drained, not from heavy labor, but from the endless weight of micro-control. Alan Watts often pointed out that nature doesn't operate this way. The river doesn't sit down with a map to plot its route to the sea. It doesn't argue with the rocks or try to negotiate with the land. It simply moves, finding the path that's already there. A tree doesn't panic about which leaf should fall first in autumn. It doesn't optimize the process. It trusts the season, and the letting go happens naturally. In our own lives, the same principle applies. The more we tighten our grip, the more we cut ourselves off from the natural flow of events. Control feels safe, but it comes at a cost. It builds walls where bridges could be. It turns every choice into a high-stakes game, and it leaves no room for life to surprise us. Think about the last time something wonderful happened to you without planning. Meeting a friend by chance, stumbling into a book that changed your perspective, or discovering a place you instantly loved. Those moments didn't come from obsessive planning. They came from openness. They happened because you left space for them to arrive. Watts put it simply, nature itself pries your fingers open and shows you the illusion of control. Life will give you this lesson one way or another, sometimes gently, sometimes by ripping the steering wheel from your hands. The question is, will you learn it willingly? Overthinking and over-controlling create a subtle kind of poverty, not of money, but of joy. We miss sunsets because we're rearranging our calendars. We lose laughter because we're managing outcomes. We push happiness away because we're too busy trying to trap it in a box. But when we loosen our grip, something shifts. The river still finds the sea. The tree still blossoms in spring. And we too find our way, not by forcing the path, but by allowing ourselves to be carried by it. If you step back and watch closely, you'll see that most lives end up following one of two paths. Path one is the road of control. It's paved with plans, rules, and checklists. Every detail is accounted for, every variable anticipated. On the surface, it feels safe, like living in a fortress with high walls and locked gates. But inside, there's a constant hum of anxiety. You're always on guard, scanning the horizon for threats. You push harder when things don't go to plan, convinced that more control will fix the problem. Over time, you burn out. Your fortress becomes a prison. You're cut off from others because cooperation requires trust, and trust feels dangerous. Path 2 is the road of trust. This doesn't mean drifting aimlessly. It means knowing when to hold the reins and when to loosen them. You set a direction, but you leave space for detours. You recognize that life's richest gifts often come from the unplanned. On this path, you don't see other people as threats to your control. You see them as allies. You work together, share power, and allow each person's strengths to shape the outcome. The result isn't perfect in the traditional sense, but it's alive, organic, and deeply human. Alan Watts might compare these paths to two kinds of government, a monarchy versus a democracy. In the monarchy of control, one ruler, your anxious mind, makes all the decisions. It demands obedience from every part of your life, and nothing moves without its command. In the democracy of trust, power is shared. Ideas, events, and people contribute freely, and the system thrives because it's flexible. In a forest, no single tree controls the sunlight, yet the entire ecosystem flourishes. And here's the truth: shared power nourishes all things without dominating anything. The forest grows because no one is trying to run it like a factory. The river thrives because no one is forcing it into a straight line. Life flows best when we participate rather than dominate. When you choose trust, something remarkable happens. Cooperation replaces suspicion. Creativity replaces fear. And happiness, instead of being a goal you chase, becomes the natural byproduct of a life lived in rhythm with the world. The choice is always in front of you. Do you want the tight grip of control with all its isolation and exhaustion, or do you want the open hand of trust with all its unexpected beauty? Most of us are taught from childhood that not knowing is a weakness. We're supposed to have answers, plans, and explanations ready at all times. But Alan Watts turned that idea on its head. For him, I don't know wasn't a confession of ignorance. It was a doorway to freedom. Think about it. Light cannot shine on itself. A blade cannot cut itself. In the same way, you cannot fully understand yourself by staring at yourself, and you cannot fully predict life while you're living it. The harder you try to pin it down, the more it slips away. When you say, "I don't know," you loosen the grip of your expectations. You stop forcing the river to follow your map and instead step into its current. Suddenly, life is free to surprise you, and surprise is the very soil in which happiness grows. This isn't the same as being careless. It's not shrugging your shoulders and letting chaos take over. It's an intentional choice to trust the unfolding, to accept that there are forces at play far beyond your control, and that some of those forces are working for you in ways you can't yet see. Picture meeting someone new. If you walked into that conversation convinced you already knew exactly who they were, you'd miss everything unexpected about them. But if you approach with, "I don't know," a genuine curiosity, you open the door to discovery. That's how relationships deepen. That's how life deepens. Watts would often remind us that what I really want is tied to what you want. And what you want, I don't know. Surprise me. In that space between knowing and not knowing, connection happens. Joy slips in, and we remember that life isn't a puzzle to be solved, but a song to be danced to. The great mistake is thinking that certainty equals safety. In reality, it often equals stagnation. When you let go of needing to know everything, You create space for the things that matter most, the moments, the people, the opportunities, to arrive on their own timing. I don't know is not the end of wisdom. It's the beginning. We began with a paradox. The more you chase happiness, the further it runs. Now, after walking through rivers, forests, potatoes, and the open sky of I don't know, the paradox starts to make sense. Happiness isn't a trophy waiting at the end of a finish line. It's not something you earn by controlling every detail or planning every move. It's something that emerges naturally when you stop suffocating it. Like a wild bird, it lands when you've made your hand still enough for it to trust. Letting go is not the same as losing. It's making room. It's clearing the field so something new can grow. Decay and impermanence, the very things we try to resist, are not enemies. They are allies. The leaf must fall for the bud to grow. The tide must go out for it to return. When you understand this, you stop demanding guarantees. You stop clinging to what's slipping away. You start trusting the rhythm that's been here long before you and will be here long after. In that trust, anxiety begins to soften. The fortress doors open, and life begins to move through you instead of being forced by you. Watts often reminded us that life is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be lived. And to live it fully, we must learn the art of the open hand, a hand that holds lightly, that welcomes without gripping, that trusts without demanding. So let the river carry you. Trust the tide. What is yours will arrive in its own season, and when it does, you'll be ready, not because you've chased it down, but because you've created the space for it to come. And when that moment arrives, you may find yourself smiling at the great cosmic joke. The thing you thought you had to run after was already on its way to you the whole time. All it needed was for you to stop running and open your hands.